The BBC said, "It's the spirit of When the Sun Goes Down, and I Bet You Look Good on the Dance Floor, that nailed them to our hearts. Not any particular compositional flair. Alex Turner's John Cooper Clarke indebted lyricism aside. With their innocent faces but wicked tongues, the Arctics were always a commercial proposition in waiting. Domino's success in signing them sped the process up, but it's hard to imagine a world without these songs finding a sizable audience, label assistance or not." Pitchfork said, "When the Sun Goes Down, the only track here that's three-dimensional structurally as well as lyrically. Whatever way you slice it, the material just ain't that jaw-dropping. Sure, it's catchy as fuck, it bobs along at a nice pace, and the lyrics are so tongue-in-cheek you can't help but smile, but there's really nothing here to suggest that the music-buying public won't turn their back on this a couple of years down the line. The darkness, anyone. And it's a shame that this happens, that the industry inflates bands to these oversized proportions, pushing them beyond all reasonable expectations. Because when you get right down to it, when you look past all the bullshit, When the Sun Goes Down is a good wee tune." And that's Graham Johnston at Pitchfork. Now, I don't have to take too much issue with what Graham says here, because I think to take the points from this is when he says, who's to say that the public wouldn't turn on this like in a couple of years. It's a good point to make about people that kind of want them to stay in the box again. If they hadn't evolved, I do think that would have been the case. If they'd have just carried on making stuff like this post, maybe they would have got away with it for a third album. But if they just carried on further than that, I think if they hadn't evolved, it would have become a bit tiresome and people would have moved on like they have with every other indie band from that period. So
which chimes with what we were saying on I think it was the Mardy Bum episode, that people don't realize this was just a passing fad in music. This thing of just singing about like kitchen sink drama, much like the film that the album takes its name from. This didn't carry on after Arctic Monkeys moved on from this. I mean, they moved on from it fairly late, actually, compared to.
yeah,
It was already dying out. Even when Favourite Worst Nightmare came out, that was Lily Allen had gone off and married a chemical brother, and it was just Kate Nash died a death.
I can't remember much of that. I can't remember much of that period after 2009 being around, to be honest. So yeah, you're right. I think 2008 was its last kind of hurrah, wasn't it? Maybe even 2007. I can't remember.
If they were still singing about stuff like this now, then people would be slagging them off just as much as they are doing the stuff they're doing. You can't bloody win.
No, and I think because AM was so good, that kind of adds to it. But there is a big. But when people forget is that there's a huge musical shift in AM and this though. So like you can't have it both ways. You can't want the evolution when you like it and not want the evolution when you don't like it. So yeah, that's what I'd say. But yeah, he is right about us building people up. We've talked about that a few times, building people up to do it with sports people all the time, like you always say, and we're given unreasonable expectations, and then when they don't meet those expectations, we shoot them down. So yeah.
And take great pleasure in doing so.
When I first read it, I was like, thought I was going to dig out Graham. But actually, upon reflection, I think he actually likes the track. He's just saying, I don't think they're going to. And at this point, he didn't know. He didn't know what they were going to evolve to. But I did. I always thought they'd be around because they were too good. They weren't like the others. They were too good.
Not like all the other guys.
They're not.
Weirdly enough, now you've mentioned AM, when you think about it, lyrically, AM is probably the closest album to this. There are, in terms of some of the choices of words on AM. There's a lot that it does have in common with this album. Which we will
I think when we get to AM, I've got a lot to say about why the change of music had to happen after AM, and in relation to this era in particular. So more on that in a few years, everyone. But yeah, that's the end of the review.